I just want to say that like Democrats did a lot of things wrong over the last 4 years, and sometimes somehow ended up in a circumstance where people just did not trust them to be able to deliver real results for their lives and their families' lives. It's as simple as that. When people came down to make a decision about what is best for my family or my community or my prosperity, Democrats, I don't trust them.
David Pakman brought on Cory Booker, who's a U.S. Senator from New Jersey, and you could tell during this episode that David Pakman thought that Cory Booker would just go with his delusions about Donald Trump and his delusions about the woke left. And Cory Booker actually surprised me and surprised David Pakman very obviously, and kind of tore his arguments apart and kind of said that I don't agree and I'm not going to do what you think I should do about Donald Trump. I'm not going to act the way that you think and the woke left think that I should act about Donald Trump. It's nice to see that some people have at least a little bit of common sense left in their brain. Let's get into this clip here where David Pakman very clearly panics as his guest, who he thought was going to be on his side, actually turns against him and starts saying that, now you sound a little bit insane here, David. Let's get into this clip here.
Democratic senator representing New Jersey since 2013. Senator, so good to have you on. You know, I don't know exactly where to start, but I think maybe one place would be in thinking about the next 3 years and 364 days, and much has been written about the resistance the first time around was not quite enough. We need a more robust opposition. When they lost in 2020, they built this media ecosystem, an activist ecosystem, and money was pouring in rather than people.
Brother, when you lost in 2016, you tried to take the man out in multiple different ways with the Russia collusion stuff, and then literally impeach the guy twice. And then also, in the lead up to 2024, you try to take the man out literally, take his life multiple times. What do you mean you need a more robust defense system? How much more robust can it be? Like, what do you mean? I'm very curious to see what David Pakman means by that, because that's kind of crazy considering the defense system that has already been in place.
Saying, let's sit on the sidelines. What's your assessment overall right now about sort of the mood of the opposition and the tactics that you would suggest we employ over the next 2 and 4 years?
Well, you asked me that question, and two things immediately popped into my head. The first, I just want to say that like Democrats did a lot of things wrong over the last 4 years, and somehow ended up in a circumstance where people just did not trust them to be able to deliver real results for their lives and their families' lives. It's as simple as that. When people came down to make a decision about what is best for my family or my community or my prosperity, Democrats, I don't trust them. Now, that said, it wasn't a wildly landslide of an election. I heard Donald Trump yesterday lying through his teeth, claiming he had the biggest victory. He didn't get the majority of votes. He got more popular votes than Kamala Harris, but the majority of Americans voted against him. But that said, this was a time that I believe if Americans really felt the Democrats had their best interest on the issues that matter.
Hold the phone. The majority of Americans voted against him. What the hell kind of talking point is that? What kind of talking point is that? The majority, like, you see these mind games and the word games they're playing. The majority of Americans also voted against Kamala Harris, idiot. And more of the majority voted for Donald Trump than voted for Kamala Harris. I would be surprised if any election going forward with the age of that we're in right now, if the person who won the election, who wins the elections moving forward, ever gets the majority of votes in America. Because now we're in the age of people being able to rise to power and rise to fame so quickly with social media. You can have a couple of TikToks go viral and be a presidential candidate that actually gets votes. There's going to be more RFK Juniors. There's going to be more third-party people who are running in the future. I'd be surprised if a future presidential elect person who wins the presidential election ever wins the majority of votes in the mind games that we're playing right here with this guy ever again. You see that those little mind games, do they piss me off?
Most of them, we would have resoundingly won that election. I do want to point out it had mixed results. There are a lot of my colleagues in the Senate who won in states that also Donald Trump won. That rarely happens where in a state that a president won, the Senate candidate of that president's party lost. So in many ways, the brand of people like Tammy Baldwin, the brand of people like Ruben Gallego, the feeling people had about those leaders was, I trust you to have my back or my family's back. And so in this time where Trump is walking in, a lot of people want to know what's the anti-Trump strategy. And my focus is not the anti-Trump strategy. My focus is fighting for Americans, doing things that make them safer, stronger, and more prosperous. The Democratic Party should define themselves by what they stand for, not by who they stand against. And if Donald Trump comes after your health care, if he comes after your Social Security, if he comes after your Medicare, if he comes after your public education, those are the things we should fight for because we're fighting for the American people. We're fighting for issues. But I'm tired of this tribal community, that country that we live in, where parties are defining themselves in contrast to each other. Now, that said, as a guy who beat a big political machine in the state of New Jersey to win the seat, we had to have really good strategy electorally as well. And I think, as I'm telling the United States senators, and I've taken on a position in leadership in my Senate Democratic caucus, is, guys, you are not communicating or talking to voters because you think that we live in a communication world that is where it was in the 1980s. The reality is most voters get their information from these things. I spend most of my time. I've cut cable, so I'm not seeing your your ads that you're putting up. We have to become a much more digitally aware set of leadership, and it's hard.
If you enjoy content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Chuck Schumer, who's allowed me to ascend to this position, he and I had long conversations. I said, Chuck, you still have a flip phone, sir. We've got to start talking more about how to be on these platforms where voters are getting much of their news and information, and then having the mechanisms with which to communicate in addition to the right message. And I, for one, believe the message is not the resistance. The message is, you will see me every single day getting up and doing everything I can so you can keep more of your hard-earned dollars, so that you can have better health care, that you can have a nation where we don't spray chemicals on your foods that are banned in other countries, that we can fight for housing and to make housing more affordable so that the very idea of the American dream can be achievable for your generation. That's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear how much I might hate Donald Trump or what have you. That, to me, is the wrong message.
You mentioned the communication strategy and the smartphones, and I think this is very interesting. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to the White House and met with now former President Biden and some of the communication officials to do a sort of like what went wrong sort of thing from my perspective as someone on kind of this side of the independent media communication side. And what was most alarming maybe was not that they didn't know what went wrong. It was that they did just a few weeks after the election. And, one of the things that we talked about was that this MAGA world very successfully built kind of this space where it's cool to be part of it, right? Trump as a candidate hung out for hours with the Nelk boys and Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and the political podcasts and the non-political podcasts. And one of the things that I worry about is if in September of 2028, I start getting the emails from different staffers and communications people, it's kind of too late. And so in a way, if there's something they did right starting in 2021, was they started really building out this ecosystem then, and the growth of Turning Point USA and the Daily Wire and all of these organizations. Is there some way to organize this on the left, not as a sort of acute resistance in time, but more as like, we need 4 years of this to be in the right place 4 years from now? I don't know who organizes that.
Well, again, this idea that the Democratic Party is some hegemonic command and control top-down organization is just wrong. We all know that. There
Right.
are the Democratic Governors Association, the Democratic House members have an organization, and so on.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. I don't believe that for a second. And I don't think anybody else watching this believes that for a second either. I mean, Just look at what happens every single election cycle, dude. Like, look at what happened back even in 2020 when the Democrats won. Whenever there was, they were trying to decide who was going to run against Donald Trump. One day or one night, it's like everybody got a call and they were like, okay, guys, Joe Biden is the candidate. Everybody else drop out right now or else. And everybody else just drops out and endorses Joe Biden without question. Look at what happened in 2024. Kamala Harris, they just decided one day, I don't know if it's the Obamas or the Clintons or if it's somebody else, but somebody decided one day Kamala Harris is going to be the candidate and nobody else has a say. We're not going to have a vote. We're not going to have a primary. We decided. And everybody else is just like, okay, because I don't know what happens if they decide to say no, but it's probably not pretty. And everybody's just like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just drop out and endorse Kamala Harris. What do you mean there's obviously some kind of head of the snake that's really calling the shots? Yeah, there's little organizations and stuff like that, but let's be real, dude. There's somebody calling the shots here. Like I said, I don't know who it is exactly. I don't know if it's the Obamas or the Clintons or who exactly it is, but it's somebody. And it's not segmented like this guy is saying it is. But I like the fact that this guy is saying, he's not just buying into the woke cult completely like David Pakman very obviously wants him to do. And he's like, no, I'm not just going to rule as an anti-Trump senator like everybody wants me to be. I'm going to do what's best, what he thinks is best for, his people, which, we'll see. We'll see if he actually is doing what's best for his people, because I would think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would say the same thing. And just look what they did to the United States of America while they were in office. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about David Pakman bringing this guy onto his show. And you could tell he kept asking him questions and trying to lead him into certain ways of thinking. He wasn't really going for it, and props to him for not doing that. And how, he's willing to criticize the left wing. I disagree with Pakman a little bit that the left wing and the Democrats know what they did wrong. I think a lot of them do know what they did wrong, and people like Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian can see what they did wrong, and they're willing to acknowledge it. But people like David Pakman and Destiny, they're doubling and tripling down on the woke agenda, on the woke conversation and the woke rhetoric. That's what's going to lose you the next election too. I hope they keep doing it, keep doubling down and tripling down, because if they do that, they're going to lose the next one too. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about David Pakman getting this guy onto his show. And he's just not really going for it. He's not giving into the leading questions that David Pakman was asking. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this David Pakman versus his guest situation.